families in the PMS bigger family having made a donation to the Autism BrainNet after a loved one has passed away. It is a very serious topic, and we can get very sad and pretty, depressing. But what I want you guys to understand is that there's really a reason that there is data coming out of brain tissue research that is making a direct impact on people with autism. And the Autism BrainNet, which is who I'm representing, not the Autism Science Foundation, is actually has an agreement, or has just some sort of agreement with the Autism BrainNet. So, the brain, even if your child does not have autism, we still need to look at them and to make comparisons, and it will be shared with multiple researchers. In fact, about one brain goes to support about 20 different research studies. So really, to understand, the theme is to understand the brains of people with autism. You have to study the brains of people with autism, and frankly, there just hasn't been enough of this resource to really understand it. So in 2014, the Simons Foundation and Autism Speaks joined together and revamped what was the Autism Tissue Program. I've been getting emails maybe from people at this meeting that have asked if they had registered with the Autism Tissue Program, or are they still registered, and the answer is yes. So what the new Autism BrainNet does, though, is bring together, instead of just one place where the brains are collected, 4 different places. And so that's 4 different regions around the United States. And I'll go through where they are, but it really actually to you guys probably won't matter. You can understand a lot about autism just by studying the brain, and I'll go through what that means. The causes, the biomarkers, so better understanding behavioral features and how they tie into biological markers of autism, and then also identification of therapeutic targets. We just heard about three compounds that are being used to treat PMS, and I can tell you, they look in animal models to see whether or not they're effective, whether or not they change the brains in animal models first. Well, we don't even know what to look at in animal models without first studying the brains of people. So I think you guys have all heard about this. This came out maybe last year. There was a case series of football players who had chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And because of this, there's been a group of football players who have since deceased, and athletes who have since deceased, that have donated their brains to research. And after about 110 of them were collected, they were actually able to go back and say, well, we actually now have a diagnosis for this that we can use to help people before this happens, right? So we can look at the brain over time, and we can see what happens in the brains of CTE. And that was probably a really high profile case, but therapeutics for things like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and autism and Phelan-McDermid syndrome are really reliant on studying and understanding the brains of people. So what can it do? Why we saw a presentation about looking at the structure of the brain using like MRIs and functional MRIs. And so those are great. They show you about brain structure. But when you get into therapeutics, you're really looking at things that affect the cells themselves. So this is just a little schematic of brain neurons and how they connect to each other. So you have hundreds of millions, if not a billion, brain cells, and they connect 3 billion times. So every single time they connect, that's part of a circuit and part of a process that affects behavior and affects functioning. And the drugs that are out there kind of target the different areas of these brain cells, from anywhere from the cell body to the dendrites. So the dendrites are like the branches of a tree that branch out and touch other branches of trees. and then the dendritic spines, which are more like the leaves, so that they're at the very end. So think of them as like, and then there's actually a tree that I see every day that reminds me of this very image. So one of the things that has really accelerated the understanding of autism is the fact that, and Dr. Buxbaum mentioned how the brain cells are more immature. If you look at the brain cells of people with autism, and you stain it with something that can look at not just the cell body, but the dendrite and the which is the branches, and then the leaves, you'll see something. Let's see if I can. You know what? I bet you if I do this, can you see this? You can see my thing. So these are those. These are called dendrites, and these are like the leaves on the tree. In people with autism, if you look, they actually have more. So they haven't necessarily gone through the stage when a neuron is young. It has all of these different branches, and it branches out all over the place. Are you looking for this? There's a pointer on it. Okay, thank you. They branch out all over the place, and it's through learning and experience that they're kind of what's called pruned back. So just like you would prune a tree in your yard, this happens in the brain. They're kind of pruned back, and that's not happening in the cells of people with autism. Also, I know that this is an issue. There's a bunch of issues that you guys have. One of them is anxiety. And so there are regions of the brain that are associated with anxious behavior and fearful behavior, and one of them is the amygdala in the brain, and it's located about here. And there really hasn't been that much study in autism until recently about what goes on in this area of the brain, how it's related to social anxiety, and how it's related to things like being fearful of looking at other people in the eye. So recently, just like earlier this year, there was a study, the largest study to date, that looked at the neurons in the brains of people with autism compared to without autism in the amygdala. And they found that around adolescence, like around 12 to 13 years of age, where the brains of people, so without autism, the neuron number increased through time. But if you had autism, the cell number started to decrease. And this happened around adolescence. And this is kind of a time where parents are saying, there needs to be more studies on this, obviously, that anxiety is really peaking. And so this will help explain and potentially help develop therapeutics for anxiety in people with autism, because we really don't know if people with autism or Phelan-McDermid have the same type of anxiety as everybody else. It could be different, it could be similar, and we don't know if the drugs necessarily are the most appropriate ones. So one of the things I know you guys think about a lot is sleep. So I have yet to meet a family that says that their kids sleep really well through the night every night. So what is going on there? What is happening in the brain? And actually there is an area of your brain called the pineal gland, which secretes something called melatonin. And this melatonin, which you probably all heard of because you can get this in your health food store. People take it to get rid of jet lag. It really does help you sleep. In people with autism, there seems to be less melatonin in the pineal gland. And so that can possibly help partially explain why people with autism have altered sleep-wake cycles. Now, despite the 2 donations that occurred earlier last year, there really hasn't been that many donations of people with Phelan-McDermid, so we don't know if this also applies to Phelan-McDermid or not, but I would bet that if you looked at the brains of people with Phelan-McDermid syndrome, they would show lower levels of melatonin. Now, melatonin doesn't work in everyone. I'm sure a lot of you have tried melatonin. It may not work in everyone, but at least this does provide some of an explanation. So I mentioned that we collaborate with a lot of different partners. We're not just, kind of winging it on our own. We work with the NIH NeuroBiobank, which is a series of brain banks around the country funded by the NIH. The Dupe15Q Alliance, they I don't know how many of you have heard of them. It's another disease caused by mutations in chromosome 15 that have not similar, they're not Phelan-McDermid syndrome, but they have some similar phenotypes in terms of high rates of epilepsy, high rates of motor problems, and a high rate of autism. And then the Prader-Willi Research Syndrome Foundation is also working with us. So the idea is that we need more brains to study for people with autism, people without autism, people with genetic disorders that are associated with autism and have autism, and those who have genetic disorders associated with autism without autism. And so there's now 4 brain banks across the United States, and the Autism Science Foundation really does most of the work in the Autism BrainNet by trying to communicate the importance of this program to families. And we've done that by working with the people in the local communities. So there's a brain bank in New York, and so there's a family that we work with in New York, and in Texas, actually in Dallas, we work with the Breach family. They are registrants. They are not next of kin. And that's someone you can identify with, right? Because if you had to identify with a next of kin, you probably would be so afraid and it would make you so sick to your stomach that you may not want to sign up to learn more information. But they are registrants, and I do know that you all know the 2 families that were donors last year, and so I realize that this is very, very hard to listen to. We go to walks, we go to different events. You can see we were at a Seaver event, if you can see that Icon School of Medicine sign, autism-specific events, more science-related events. And frankly, what we need is for people to sign up for more information. We're not looking to recruit anyone into the program, really. People are sometimes worried if they sign up that we're going to be following them around, waiting for something to happen. I can assure you that there are not that many people that can possibly do that. What we do have is this newsletter that goes out quarterly, and it really talks about anything from sex differences in what goes on in the brain to different genetic studies and how they're leading to therapeutics, how the brain changes with age and how that explains symptoms. It talks about new scientific findings, and it also kind of, we once in a while will have a webinar from a scientist to talk about a particular topic. We had one about epilepsy. We had one about, and Shefali Jesti talked about epilepsy, and then there was a researcher that talked about brain tissue of people with epilepsy. So what we're really interested in is sharing more information with you. So you can sign up. The best way is to just put your name and your email address on one of those cards and bring it up, and I have plenty of freebies to give away, t-shirts and squishy brains and cell phone cards. We also have a Facebook account and Twitter, of course. Doesn't everyone have Facebook and Twitter? And we also have a website. So it's takesbrains.org, and you can sign up online. And you can also contact me directly. I think my email may be somewhere, or info@autismbrainnet.org. So I'm going to wrap that up so we can all get to happy hour. But go ahead, sign up, give me your name and your email address. I have in that large suitcase I'm dragging around, I have plenty of t-shirts and squishy brains and giveaways. So if you want to bring up your registration card, I don't see a taker for oh, go ahead, Megan. I don't see a taker for someone to help me, so I'll just hand them out.
So I registered years ago, but I remember wondering, other than the newsletter, nobody is going to be contacting me, and this is not a contract, I'm not committing to the decision I make today to register just means that I'm providing some information ahead of time.
It's like signing up for any other newsletter. If something happens, God forbid, something happens tomorrow, no one's going to track you down. You're not obligated to do anything. It's just more information. When I go to walks, I literally say, would you like more information about understanding the brains of people with autism? We're the Autism BrainNet, and this is what we do. And so there's absolutely no obligation. You don't, if you read a couple newsletters and you decide this is boring, just unsubscribe. We won't ever contact you again, and we won't, sell your addresses or anything to anyone. Oh, please.
I don't know if you're able to answer my question. What's the difference when we try to use brain cells
Yeah, so it's really not the same. So induced pluripotent stem cells are amazing for a lot of different studies, especially about screening drug compounds and understanding some of the biology, but it's also not a brain cell. They're made to look like brain cells, and they're really great, but they're not the same. So what we really need to do is look directly at brain cells as compared to the induced stem cell. Does that make sense? They are similar in so many ways, but they're not the exact same.
Is this U.S. only?
Canada and the UK as well. Canada, there might have been a slide I missed. There's one, oh yeah, I'm sorry, it's not on here. We have a brain bank, Oxford Brain Bank in the UK, and then Canada.
Are there similar programs in other countries?
Yeah, so the Netherlands has one, so they have a neurodevelopmental brain bank, and so it's really based on if you live in another country, you should look into what brain banking options are in that country. There may be one, there may not be. Some countries are more active about brain banking than others. Oh, go ahead.
If I have a researcher in my country, is he able to access your data?
Yes. So the tissue samples I mentioned, a brain can be used for up to 20 to 30 research projects. We don't give that tissue away lightly. They have to make an application. They have to show that they have the expertise in the assay that they're looking at. It's really, we consider it it's the more precious resource compared to anything else. So they have to write an application. They have to make their justification. There's a separate review committee to make sure that they're not, people, concocting stuff in basements or whatever. And then tissue can be distributed around the world. And then the data that they receive, the data they produce is shared back with the Autism BrainNet. And then also, if you like us on Facebook or if you get the newsletter, we're pretty good about sharing out the results of these findings and trying to put them in context, right? So what does it mean that someone has lower melatonin levels? Or why is it important that they have changes in the number of dendrites on the neuron? Or, I know there's been I know Yongwei Zhang was here. What is epigenetics, and why is it important for people with Shank mutations? So, we try and put things together so it's not just a bunch of gobbledygook. Oh, does somebody else have a question? Yeah.
My name is Larry Doctor, and this is my wife Susan and our daughter Sarah. Passed away a year ago yesterday. And I just want to say that we hopefully encourage everyone to sign up for the samples. It was a very, very caring, touching process that was done at the funeral home. Our funeral director is one of my former students, actually, and she said that the doctor was so caring and so, professional in his approach, and so we just want to share that with you folks.
Thank you.
Larry
and
and Susan.
I know it's a very tough anniversary. Very tough time.
I'm not sure. Oh, good. Can I just express our heartfelt thanks, really, for your decision and your donation. I think to the doctors, it was amazing what you guys, your story is so powerful, and what you did was incredible. So thank you.
As a local nurse here in the Dallas area, we work with UT Southwestern.
Oh, good.
This be at the same time as other harvesting of organs and things for donation, or is it a separate event?
We will make sure it's coordinated. So if we work with a number of organ and tissue programs, and if there's somebody going in there to collect heart, liver, lung, or whatever, we will work with them so it's just one event. Yeah, go ahead.
I wondered about the cost to families.
There is none. Yeah, we'll take care of everything, and hopefully we do everything so that there's, I hate to say this,
You said
minimal kind of inconvenience, although it's like a completely traumatic time. We try to work in the background and handle everything.
you said you also needed normal brains. whatever
people
that is.
without autism, people without, so anyone here can register, can
That's what I
sign up
was
for more
wondering, if
information.
parents
So any
can.
parents, siblings, people in the community. So just like we need, when they give like a control, like when they give saline in a drug trial, we need, brains to compare against people who don't have, autism or Phelan-McDermid syndrome. Oh, go ahead.
The gentleman to my left here expressed a concern that maybe parents might have, and he asked, did we have an open casket? And we could not tell anything. We had an open casket funeral. There was no obvious, marks of incisions or parts of body missing or anything like that. So it was an open casket funeral. So.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, it's hard to talk about, but you. Yeah.
After our daughter's death, the hardest part was letting someone take her from our home and our arms. It was an unexpected death. And after she was gone, then I could think scientifically. I'm a nurse, and we always had intended to do this no matter what, and so we just started making the calls. It was a couple of hours after that because we actually kept her with us for hours. And when we finally told our friend who ran the mortuary, okay, you may take her now, and Larry carried her picked her up for the last time, he said, and gave her to them. Then the scientific part was so important. We wanted to make some sense of Sarah's life here on Earth, and maybe her brain tissue will somehow help the first child be cured someday. I hope I see that in my lifetime, and hope that my Sarah had a part in that, and the other little boy who died the same day.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, thank you for coming too. I mean, this is, and talking about it, because this is, a tough period.
I was going to ask the people that don't have autism, if you're already an organ donor, should you still fill out this card so you know that we want to participate?
Yeah, so with organ donation, when you sign the back of your driver's license, they will only they'll only go for those transplantable organs. Because this is research, they're not going to. Now, you still have to tell that's the other thing, sign up for information, but when the time comes, you have to make a phone call to somebody and let them know that you're interested, that you would be willing to do this, because most places aren't going to ask you that. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. So fill it out. We'll send you information. The information is not, again, we're just going to send you information. We're not keeping your name on some sort of, some sort of watch list or anything like that. So.
Does it matter the age of the individual?
No. I didn't present it, but we need to look at, this period of time when kids are starting to have seizures and stuff, we need to know about that. We need to know what's going on in the brain. We need to know as people get older how their brains change. And so there really is no limit. We need that. You can all have one, a squeezy. Yes, she's welcome to do that. You guys are all welcome to do that too. Yeah. Ooh, do you want to help me hand things out? Yeah. Logan, you want to help? So I'll be around. Thank you all for staying, and thank you for the enormous questions.
Alicia, thank you so much for coming and talking about this really important research initiative. Before you guys head out, Nick needs to make a very important announcement.
Don't forget the dinner is from 7 to 10. This is the group dinner. And sit by your region. So this gives you a chance to learn and meet people that are in your region. You may not live close to them, but they're in your region. Buy your In It to Win It tickets by 6:30 because we're going to have the drawings this evening. So if you don't get your tickets by 6:30, you don't get a chance to win the stuff that's in it to win it. So 6:30 and 7 o'clock, those are two key times. Go ahead and get a drink, and we'll see you back.